be talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Tuesday, technically afternoon, depending on where you're listening, episode of the Air Tour Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Tours. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Jam-packed show. First of all, very happy to report. I feel like Rose in Titanic, but after 84 years, producer Matt is alive. We are happy to have you back, Matt. The masses have been calling for you, and yeah, happy. I think the show will look better. It'll sound better. Happy to have Matt back. We got ourselves a jam-packed show. So very quickly, we will talk a little bit about the game last night. Kansas gets the win. Darryn Peterson plays more than he has all season. Did Torres peer pressure him? What about everybody else? From there, we'll talk about what I think is a fascinating conversation. How many teams can actually win college basketball's national championship? We'll discuss some new comments about Nate Oats and Charles Bediako. People are not happy about this. And Tyran Stokes, we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but he was in Lawrence for the Kansas-BYU game on Saturday. What does it mean? What does it not mean? We'll discuss it all. Before we get started, a couple quick things. Make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. By the way, it is pinned in the comment section. It will be pinned below if you're not watching live. Sign up for our daily college sports newsletter. I think it's the most interesting thing going, everything going on in the world of college sports. Today's was about kind of the college basketball, the early part of the carousel, NIL, portal, transfer news. This is what you need to start your day every day. Just click that link, free to sign up, no charge, no credit card, just sign up, okay? So make sure you're subscribed there. Again, it'll be pinned in the comment section live, but also pinned below. Speaking of things that you need to be excited about, you need to be excited about our friends and our hotel and casino partners. You got to be thankful, and I am thankful, I should say, for Circa Sportsbook, Circa Casino. Okay, so listen, when you're in Vegas, best place to watch games, Circa Sportsbook, Fremont Street, biggest sports book in the world. But here is the thing, as I've told you quite regularly, there is a brand new Circa Sportsbook for those of you who cannot get to Vegas in Franklin, Kentucky, at Mint Kentucky Downs. The Mint, you can see it on the screen right there. All of the same great amenities as the Circa Sportsbook in Vegas come to the East Coast. And listen, you know, this time of year, you want to watch college basketball. Maybe you want a place to watch the Super Bowl. Just no better place to hang out, no better place to chill. 40 or so minutes from Nashville. I have done the drive door to door. 40 minutes from Nashville, 20 minutes from Bowling Green, Kentucky. Best place anywhere to watch sports, to bet on sports. The brand new Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. I will tell you this, producer Matt and I will be down there for a couple shows live in March. We'll get some details after the Super Bowl. As you can imagine, the folks at Circa are busy getting ready for the big game, but brand new Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. I will be there. Matt will be there. We may even have a surprise guest. We'll get you some details on that. But yeah, excited about that. Franklin, Kentucky, Mint Kentucky Downs. With that said, busy Tuesday. No more time to waste. So let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen, we're going to actually just very quickly spend half a second talking about that gentleman right there, Darryn Peterson and the Kansas Jayhawks. They get the win on Monday night at Texas Tech, okay? And so we're not going to spend, this is going to be a 20-minute segment. We did the 20-minute segment on Saturday about Darryn Peterson, Kansas, after they beat BYU. But something sure interesting did happen on Monday night in Lubbock, Texas, that I think is worth discussing. Not only did Darryn Peterson and Kansas get the win, what's interesting to me is this. He played a season-high 35 minutes. So let's go ahead and get into it, why I think it's interesting and why I think there's something going on here. Okay, so listen. Saturday, we did the conversation about Kansas beating BYU. But the big conversation outside of the conversation, and actually, before we get back to Saturday, we should mention it was actually an unbelievable game. And there are a lot of people that just want to talk about the game. Kansas with the 64-61 win. They trailed 59-50 with 6 minutes to go. You can do the math. They outscored Texas Tech 14-2 down the stretch, including a game-tying 3 from Darryn Peterson and the game-winning 3. And so it's a great win for Kansas. Obviously, Texas Tech was without their All-American Christian Anderson. But to me, the story is that Darryn Peterson played a season-high 35 minutes. And I think, to say the least, the timing is interesting. What do I mean by that? Okay, so obviously, again, Saturday, if you listen to the show, you know we talked a lot about the fact that Kansas got the win over BYU, but it was this strange game in which Darryn Peterson has quite literally, it was the 1,000th game at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. I think you could probably say Darryn Peterson had as good of a half as anybody has ever had in that building. 18 points in the first half. Kansas has that 20-point lead. Then he goes to the bench. Then he plays just 3 minutes in the second half. Then Kansas blows a 20-point lead. Then they almost lose. But what was interesting about it to me was this, is that you had a lot of people questioning the decision to go to the bench. Now, to be clear, and this has been my stance all season long, I'm not questioning how tough Darryn Peterson is. You know, is he this? Is he that? Does he have the clutch gene? Whatever. I'm not going Skip Bayless on you, okay? But at the same time, I have said consistently, I've said this is weird. It is strange, you know, that his ability to play a first half, then he's sitting out the second half. And what became especially interesting on Saturday was he doesn't play in the second half, and then you see all sorts of crazy stuff about what was going on in Fog Allen Fieldhouse. Matt, you can pop up the tweet, the second tweet, not my tweet, but there was a fan that was at Fog Allen Fieldhouse that sent me this tweet that was absolutely fascinating. He said, "We sat behind the bench for the Kansas BYU game. First row next to the managers. We saw Darryn Peterson's agent talking to the associate AD. Associate AD went and talked to the trainer. Darryn Peterson came out a few minutes later. Darryn Peterson wasn't stretching or receiving any medical treatment, then draping massage pads on his legs. Very weird." So why am I bringing it up? It is because I thought the conversation about Darryn Peterson after the BYU game became very interesting. Okay, it went from one of the greatest performances we've ever seen to a lot of people saying what I said. And by the way, I have now apparently Kansas fans are mad at me. The Kansas beat writer was tweeting at me on Tuesday morning, whatever. But all I said was this. I'm not questioning if Darryn Peterson is hurt. I'm not questioning his toughness. What I am saying is this. If he really had cramps on Saturday, he dealt with them unlike any player I have ever seen who has cramps. Listen, we've all been watching sports to a degree for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, whatever it is. Whenever anybody has cramps, there's pretty much universal ways to deal with it. You hydrate, you stretch, you have the trainer stretch you out, you go on the stationary bike. I used the example the other day, Paolo Banchero, early in his 1 year at Duke, there was a situation where he kept cramping up. And every single game, it was the same. They tried to hydrate him. They used the foam roller on I think it was a calf that he was specifically dealing with. There's ways to deal with it. And so when Darryn Peterson came out of that game on Saturday, I said point blank, listen, again, for the last time, I'm not accusing him. I'm just saying he's dealing with cramps in a way that I've never seen an athlete deal with it. And I guess I take back what I said. I did accuse him of load managing. Matt, you could pop up my tweet from early Sunday after the game. I said, quote, "I've been thinking about this Darryn Peterson situation on Saturday against BYU. I don't think you can come to any conclusion other than that he's load managing. As his team blew a 20-point lead, he sat with a heating pad on his legs, no stretching, no stationary bike, no attempt to even try to come back." And so I bring it up because I wasn't the only one who said that. I thought it was interesting. I actually give the national media credit. No one has accused him of not wanting to play. But I heard, and at this point I'm paraphrasing, I'm not directly quoting anybody, But Gary Parrish, CBS Sports, on his podcast, he basically said the same thing I did. Never seen anyone deal with cramps like that. And he kind of took it in another direction of, if I have the number one pick, and GP, I don't know him well, but I know he covers the Memphis Grizzlies. He said, if I had the number one pick in the NBA draft, this is now an issue. This is now, how could I draft? And I'm paraphrasing, but, I'd have major questions about drafting this guy if he can't stay healthy. And I need to know why he's not trying harder to get into the game. I saw John Rothstein make comments on it. I saw the Field of 68 guys who actually had Bill Self on their show comment on it. And I thought it was interesting that for the first time, this became a national discourse. On Saturday, every single person who loves college basketball, and many who don't, tuned into that game, got 18 great minutes of Darryn Peterson. And frankly, they saw the best of him, but they also saw the frustration of having followed this situation. And I think if you're a Sacramento Kings fan, a Washington Wizards fan, the teams that could hypothetically get him, you're sitting there saying, I love the talent, but I'm a little bit worried about his ability to play. So I'm not saying anything happened, but I do think there's a possibility that the noise got back to Darryn Peterson's agent, to Darryn Peterson, to his parents, whoever has been making decisions for him. And based on the tweet that I shared, it sure does sound like it's an agent that said, hey, the public's starting to ask questions. And at some point, you do have to play if you're capable of playing. I think it's interesting. I think the timing is interesting. And I'll tell you what, a little public pressure never did anybody wrong. Darryn Peterson, a season-high 35 minutes in the win against Texas Tech on Monday night. It'll be interesting. They play Utah on Saturday. So maybe we'll see if the cramps magically come back in the second half when Kansas is up by 20 at the break. But, listen, next Monday they play number 1 Arizona at home. And then from there, the schedule obviously stays tough. Houston, a second game with Iowa State. And I think as the spotlight gets brighter, the big question will be, are we going to see Darryn Peterson on the court for more than 20, 25 minutes? Because it really felt like the noise got back to them. I will say last thing, and then actually, Matt, we'll probably take a break after this and then come back and just do the national championship tier separately. I can tell you for a fact, I was talking to somebody who I would just say has ties to the Kansas program. And I talked to him on Monday after the game. They said, Torres, they are not happy with you right now. I think I was one of many who called this out. And hey, however the noise got back, I'm just happy to see Darryn Peterson on the court. And I hope it's something that continues. All right, that's what we're going to do. I was going to go right into the national championship tier, but that conversation went a little bit longer than I was expecting. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. The topic of the day that I do want to get to, Circa Sportsbook national championship odds. I think we're starting to get a feel for exactly how many teams can win a national championship. We'll take a quick break. I will give you the only teams I believe can win a college basketball national championship. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, let's be real. Nothing ages you faster this time of year than following your favorite college football team. The recruiting, transfer portal, NIL, maybe you had a coaching change, maybe you're even getting ready for a postseason game. Well, unless you're Notre Dame, another conversation for another day. But it leaves wrinkles and does a number on a man's face. That's why, folks, I use Tiege Hanley. Yes, I've been telling you about Tiege Hanley. I started using it about a month ago now, and I'll tell you what, I look better and my skin feels better even during this hectic time of year. Among my favorite products, the Super Serum and Eye Serum, they've been legit game changers. Fine lines, softer. Under eye bags, way less brutal. Yeah, I might be up all hours of the night watching all sorts of games, but with Tiege Hanley, you'd never know it. What I love about Tiege, everything they make is high quality and designed for us guys. They send you exactly what you need each month, so you don't have to wander around a store pretending that you know what all these labels mean. By the way, ladies, this time of year, this makes the perfect gift for the fella in your life who needs help, your dad, your friend, your coworker, whoever looks like he might have a couple wrinkles rolling in from watching too much film in the middle of the night. Right now, this is what I love about Tiege. They're giving listeners of the Aaron Torres pod a special offer, 40% off your first box plus a free $20 gift. That's an insane deal for how high these quality products are. All you got to do is just click that link below. That's 40% off your first box plus a $20 free gift. an insane offer. Just click the link below. Football might drain you emotionally, but Tiege keeps you looking really good. Even as, again, you're breaking down film late at night. You're not a coach, but you know what? Tiege Hanley's going to make you look good anyway. All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. So do want to keep the conversation going and do want to get to the topic of the day. The topic of the day is early February every year. We always do a segment with the idea of, okay, we are now a month away from March Madness. How many teams can actually win a national championship? And I thought right now would be good. By the way, just going to be totally transparent with everybody. I got a weird smell coming out of the other room. If the fire alarm goes off, we'll process that in real time. But it's I don't know. I checked. Something weird's going on in the back. Anyway, Matt, you could cut that part out when we clip this off. But it's February, and as I said, every single year we do this. You know, how many teams can realistically win the national championship? I always try to wait until February because the way that I see it is pretty straightforward. Is that one? Basically, you know, we're at the time of the year where everybody, we've now seen them through out of conference play and early conference play. And I think sometimes teams can, frankly, peak in the out of conference. Sometimes, you know, you get in the out of conference, you don't play tough competition, or you play maybe tough competition that doesn't end up holding up over the course of the season. In other words, some of the wins that look great in the moment, oh, that team was just overrated. Sometimes there's stuff that changes. Teams get injured, whatever. And so I bring it up because February is always a good time to reset how many teams can win it all. And so what I want to do is give you my list, all odds, by the way, via Circa Sportsbook, brand new Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. We'll be doing some shows there, but the Circa app is available in Missouri, in Kentucky, in Illinois, in Nevada, and a bunch of other states. So if you see odds that you like, check them out on the Circa app. And I will also mention, obviously, odds are always subject to change. These are the odds that are listed right now online. And the last thing I would say, it is Tuesday at noon Eastern time. I only bring it up because some of these teams are playing tonight. Some of them are playing tomorrow. Even if a team loses, assuming there's no major injuries, I still think these are the teams that are good enough to win it. So let's get to the Circa odds. And actually, it's interesting. Arizona is number one in the country. But in Circa's odds, Michigan is the favorite to win the national championship. Michigan at plus 350. Matt, you could go ahead and drop that for half a second because Smash the Numbers, who is a big Michigan fan, says people are saying the picture of Dusty May in front of the Izzone was the GOAT of Michigan basketball pictures. Do you believe those people? Should it be framed and put in the Louvre? Okay. I don't know about the Louvre. Listen, I don't know if it's going right next to the Mona Lisa, but it was a pretty badass picture for people who did not see it. Dusty May, right before the Michigan State game, sits in front of the Michigan State student section. They're yelling, they're screaming. He's just smiling. If I had known you were going to drop that, Smash the Numbers, I would have absolutely definitely gone ahead and had that pulled. I did not know, but Michigan is the favorite according to Circa Sportsbook, plus 370. Michigan is absolutely a national championship contender. Listen, they were unbelievable in the out of conference. Some of the wins, by the way, I think are holding up over the test of time. Destroyed Gonzaga. Villanova, I think at this point we can agree, is probably a fringe top 25 team that got destroyed by Michigan. And then I think what they did last week against Nebraska at home and then going to Michigan State, that's as good of a week as anybody is going to have in college basketball. They went 2-0 against two top 10 teams. We know how good they are. Jaxa Lenneberg's that dude. That was my preseason National Player of the Year. I think in some ways you could argue Adai Mara is the most important player they have. Morez Johnson is the most important player they have, but they dominate the paint. They shoot about 37% from three. Elliot Cadeau, who got so much flack at North Carolina, has turned into a very good point guard. Michigan, absolutely, positively a national title contender. Let's get to number two. As a matter of fact, Matt, why don't you just pop up the board? We'll just go by these odds, and then we'll go ahead and continue. Among the others, Arizona at plus 500, Houston at plus 1,000, UConn at plus 1,200, Duke at 1,225 at 1,250, Iowa State 14-1, Kansas we'll get to in a minute, Illinois as well. All right, so let's keep going. Arizona is number two in the odds according to Circa. You could drop the board, Matt. Arizona at plus 500. Yeah, they're a national championship contender. Another team, I think as the season is going on, their resume gets more and more impressive. Matt, keep that down for now. I want to build some suspense here as we keep going, okay? So hopefully people didn't see that. But Arizona plus 500, no doubt about it, national championship contender. As I was saying, the wins keep getting more impressive, okay? The Florida win to open the season, more impressive. The BYU win on the road. I don't know how good BYU is right now. We'll probably discuss them at some point, but unbelievable victory. Some of the other wins that Arizona has. Oh, by the way, at UConn. UConn's only loss as we record here at 12:25 Eastern on a Tuesday in February. Unbelievable resume, unbelievable team. So many different players that can beat you. Arizona, no doubt about it, a national championship contender. Matt, we don't need the board for everybody. Let's keep it going. Number 3 on that list, I believe, was it Houston was the next best odds? I could be mistaken. It might be UConn. Houston at plus 1,000. There's nothing really to say about Houston that hasn't been said. 2 losses all year, 1 at Texas Tech with full strength. Texas Tech is unbelievable. Texas Tech, frankly, would have beaten Kansas if Christian Anderson had played on Saturday. And then the only other loss, ironically, to Tennessee in a game that I was at in Vegas. I don't know what else there is to say. Kingston Flemings is playing like an All-American. You go on and on down the list. Sanak is awesome. Tugler, I think, is playing better. Kelvin Sampson even had some comments about how he thinks Tugler is finally, he wasn't healthy. Now he's finally getting healthy. But Houston at plus 1,000 is absolutely a title contender. I think they're interesting, much like Arizona, much like most of the Big 12. Many of their toughest games are ahead, and that starts this coming Saturday where they play at BYU. I think BYU is kind of becoming a desperate team, needing signature wins. Houston, by the way, still plays at Iowa State, at Kansas, and Arizona at home. So things are going to get tougher. We're going to find out a lot more about Houston. But listen, as long as Kelvin Sampson's the coach, I think they're a national championship contender. Let's keep it going. UConn plus 1,200 in the Circa Sportsbook. All odds provided by Circa Sportsbook. And I would say UConn is a national championship contender. They play Tuesday night. So if you're watching this Wednesday morning, and UConn struggled against Xavier, don't yell at me. I'm just telling you right now. UConn's a title contender. I think from the UConn perspective, that win at Creighton on Saturday night was so important. 16 threes, 4 starters in double figures, Braylon Mullins back. And I do think they are a team that is starting to figure things out, and a team that I think, I think UConn's in a weird spot. They need to keep winning. There just aren't a lot of great wins in the Big East, and there are a lot of bad losses that they could potentially take. They play at St. John's on Friday night. That's going to be an incredible game. 2 games left at St. John's, 1 game left at Nova. But I think for UConn, at this point, it's more about avoiding bad losses because there just aren't a bunch of great wins to be had. The good news is UConn certainly did their work in the preseason, or in the out-of-conference, beat Florida at Madison Square Garden, beat Illinois at Madison Square Garden, won at Kansas. I think it's safe to say those wins are holding up well. I do have UConn as a team that is absolutely good enough to win it as well. Staying with the blue blood programs, no doubt about it, Duke, in my opinion, at plus 1,250, again, via the Circa Sportsbook. No doubt, in my mind, good enough to win a national championship. I don't know what there is to say. Listen, I think Duke right now might actually be a better team than they were last year. I have made that argument. Now, listen, is the ceiling as high? I don't know. Clearly, Cooper Flagg and Con Knippel were pretty good, given that, Cooper Flagg went for 49 the other night, and Con Knippel went for whatever it was, 34, 35 in the same game. So I just bring it up because I don't know if the ceiling is quite as high. But Cam Boozer is an automatic 22, 25, and 10. Isaiah Evans is playing really well. He's an automatic about 15 points. All of a sudden, that's 40 points right there, right off the top before the game even starts. I think Dame Sarr and Malik Brown are individually 2 of the best defensive players in college basketball. I know they don't have great point guard play, but Duke is absolutely good enough to win a national championship. Let's keep it going after Duke. Next on the list is Was it Iowa State? I think it's Iowa State. We'll say it's Iowa State at +4. I actually think Iowa State's really good. And Iowa State's an interesting team. They're 20-2 right now. And they took all of their losses in 1 week. So they lost back-to-back games about 3 weeks ago. At Kansas was one. The other one was probably the worst loss of most of these contenders at Cincinnati. They've since won 4 straight, all by double figures, 3 by 30-plus points. And again, I said this in our top 10 on Monday. I feel like Iowa State is the new Villanova, in which they don't recruit one and dones. They're not crazy in the portal, and I know Nova wasn't crazy in the portal back in the day because there was no portal under Jay Wright. They develop pros in their program. Josh Jefferson is going to be a first-round pick, in my opinion. Now, he is technically a transfer, but Kylian Torres, I believe is how you pronounce the last name, from France. I think he's going to play in the NBA. I think Milan Momcilovic is going to play in the NBA. They got dudes everywhere. Now, again, like all of these Big 12 teams, a team that we have to see down the stretch, they still have a game against Kansas, Houston, at BYU, plus Texas Tech, plus Arizona State. How about this for a 6-game stretch starting on Valentine's Day? Happy Valentine's Day. Kansas at home. 2 days later, play Houston at home. Then at BYU, at Utah, Texas Tech, and Arizona. So, yeah, things are going to get a lot tougher before they get easier. I think Iowa State, though, can win a national championship. They're a team, to me, I think because of the resume, they'll probably end up being like a 3 seed. But like if they're playing in an Elite Eight against, say, a Duke to go to the Final Four, could I see them winning? Absolutely. 2 more teams in what I believe to be the no doubt about it tier, because I think there's some teams that are kind of fringe. 2 teams. One is Illinois. Illinois, listen, they do what they've done the last 10 days. They are a legitimate national championship contender. They are plus 1,600 in the Circa Sportsbook. If you are an Illinois fan, you can download that Circa Sportsbook app in Illinois and get Illinois at plus 1,600 right now. Keaton Wagler, unbelievable story. We know the deal, 46 or whatever it was against Purdue the other day, follows it up with 28-29 at Nebraska. When you can win at Purdue, at Nebraska in a 1-week stretch, you can pretty much beat anybody on a neutral court. They have size. They have toughness. Mirkovic, the Ivisic brothers. Don't forget, Big Z's playing over there at Illinois right now, along with his brother Thomas Love. But Wagler's become the go-to guy. It's a great story. Longest winning streak under Brad Underwood they are currently in. Another team who will be tested here down the stretch starting on Saturday at Michigan State. I do believe Illinois is a true national championship contender. The last team in the what I would call sort of no doubt about it, but they are sort of an exception even within this group. I think if Kansas has Darryn Peterson, and if he's not cramping up, I think they can win a national championship. Listen, 6 straight wins. We've said it. I think Bill Self has done as good of a coaching job, period, as anybody in college basketball this year. 6 straight wins, and he's doing it with 2 completely different teams. One where Darryn Peterson's the star, one where Darryn Peterson's on the bench and not playing, and oftentimes those 2 teams within the same game, we are seeing those 2 teams. It's not like Darryn Peterson played 18 games and then he's just out. Darryn Peterson sometimes plays 18 minutes, sometimes plays 30 minutes, sometimes plays 12 minutes, sometimes plays 0 minutes, and they keep winning. Won at Texas Tech on Monday. I know Tech didn't have Christian Anderson, but you get the point. Beat BYU, beat Iowa State at home. If Darryn Peterson is healthy, they're going to have the best player on the floor. I just would like to see him healthy for more than 1 game, but they are absolutely a national championship contender. So those to me are the 8, no doubt about it. Let's see if I can do it all off the top of my head. As a matter of fact, Matt, now you can pop up that first graphic that you had. Michigan, Arizona, Houston, UConn, Duke, Iowa State, Illinois, Kansas. Those to me are the 8, no doubt about it. Now, I do believe there's about 2 to 3, maybe 4, that if things break just the right way, maybe I could see a world where it happens. So let's get into those teams. The first one, Purdue. Purdue still has one of the best odds in college basketball. I think they're plus 950 according to Circa Sportsbook. I'll have to go ahead and look that up really quick. But Purdue, listen, it's not good right now. I get it. They've lost 3 of their last 4. They did bounce back with the win over a very bad Buzz Williams Maryland team. Same time with Purdue, I think you can look at it one of 2 ways. They've lost 3 of 4. They lost at UCLA, at Indiana, 2 teams that might not even make the tournament. But I think what you can also say is this. What's very clear is their issues are fixable. They need guys like Fletcher Lawyer to start making shots consistently. And if they do, they can maybe get back to where they were in November and December when they were one of the best teams in college basketball. I think the other thing for Purdue, if they can just get to a Final Four, they're going to have such a home court advantage in Indianapolis. So again, I have 8 that are no doubt about it. Then I have another couple that I think the right things have to happen, but Purdue is in that group at plus 950. Let's keep it going. Next team in that group, the Florida Gators. So Florida right now is plus 1,600 in the Circa Sportsbook odds. I hope I didn't miss anybody, Matt. If I did, I apologize. We'll get to everybody else next. But Florida at plus 1,600. Listen, it was hard to watch them destroy Alabama on Sunday and not say that team can win a national championship. You know, we're going to talk about Alabama in a second because we have more people calling out Nate Oats. But Ruben Chidielu, maybe the best big man in the SEC. I haven't really given much thought to it, honestly. But Tommy Hawk is going to be an NBA lottery pick. Alex Condon is going to be an NBA player. And so for Florida, what it comes down to is everything we've talked about since October when we started our preseason coverage. Are the guards going to be good enough, and are the guards going to be consistent enough? And I think at this point, all you got to do is look at the fact that they are winning these games in the manner that they are to say they don't even need the guards to be great to be in the conversation. I'll also say this with Florida. First of all, you know, I don't necessarily subscribe to like a ton of like we have to reference Ken Pom all the time, but Ken Pom's algorithm has them as like a top 6, top 7 team in the country. And you talk about a team whose losses, have withstood the test of time. 6-point loss to Arizona on opening night, 1-point loss at Duke, and a 4-point loss to UConn at Madison Square Garden. So, I mean, they were literally a basket or 2 away from beating 3 teams that are currently in the top 5 and currently in the top 5 of the national championship odds, all away from Gainesville and at Duke, Arizona and Vegas, which is basically a home court, UConn at MSG, which is basically a home court. I could go on and on. Florida Gators speak for themselves. I think they need the guards to play well for things to break the right way, but I do think under the right circumstances, they could win the national championship. Let's keep it going. Michigan State, another one. Listen, it's hard for me to say Michigan State has no chance when they have their only 3 losses all year, Duke, at Nebraska, and Michigan at home. It's hard. Like, how can you say they can't when their only losses are to truly elite teams? The counter to that is they have only lost to, they don't have like the great win on their resume, at least as of right now. The Arkansas win is good. The Kentucky win is good. I don't know that they have anything great. And then the other thing with Michigan State is that, listen, I don't know if they shoot enough threes. I was watching that Michigan game and this era right now, can you win a national championship when you're basically attempting less threes and making less threes than most other teams take and make? It's just really hard. I think even Arizona doesn't take a lot of threes, but Arizona is a team that, in my opinion, they average 10 more points per game, so they make it up in other places. I just don't know if Michigan State has enough. I would put them in that tier of just right on the cusp, but not quite there. I would put Michigan State good circumstantially. If everything were to break right, maybe, but I just don't know if it's going to happen for them this year. Couple more before we get out of here. Let's look really quick who is after Michigan State. Texas Tech. Listen, I like Texas Tech. They're kind of the opposite of Michigan State to me. They very much rely almost too much on the 3. I saw somebody tweet this, and I thought it was fair. Texas Tech is they play like the NBA teams that you hate to watch. It's all threes or JT Toppin at the rim. And I do think there is something to, you live by the 3, you die by the 3, it can come back and cost you. Listen, they made an Elite 8 last year. I think they can get to a Final Four. I just don't know if they have quite enough around those other guys. Say this, beat Texas Tech or beat Houston at home. Easily could have beat Houston on the road and had Kansas dead to rights without Christian Anderson. So maybe they are good enough and maybe I'm underselling them. I think Texas Tech at plus 3,500. I don't think it's a terrible bet. I think it's right on that fringe of probably not, in my opinion, a title contender. Really quickly, a couple teams I don't think they have enough. Listen, Gonzaga plus 1,500. Great story. I love Gonzaga. I'm actually rooting for Gonzaga. Like, I thought it was over for few. The issue with Gonzaga is, one, are the guards good enough? And then two, you look at what Gonzaga did in the early part of the season, the out-of-conference portion of play, you sit there and say, well, they had a bunch of great wins. Their wins haven't held up. They beat Alabama. Alabama stinks. They beat Auburn. Auburn stinks. They beat Kentucky. Kentucky's okay, but they're not very good. The same with UCLA. By the way, Gonzaga actually didn't play Auburn, so I apologize. But Gonzaga, they're great wins in the out-of-conference. Kentucky, Alabama, I just don't know. And then the great team that they did play was Michigan, and they got destroyed by Michigan. So I like Gonzaga. Listen, I think we're headed inevitably to a Arizona Gonzaga 1 seed, 2 seed in the West. Tommy Lloyd versus Mark Few, and maybe the teacher gets the better of the pupil if they were to play in the Elite 8. But I don't know if they quite have enough. I think they're on the fringes. I don't think Gonzaga can win it all. Another team that's a little bit of a feel-good story that we'll get to them in a second. Listen, BYU, we've talked about a lot. Maybe I change my opinion on BYU. They play Houston this week, and it is worth noting, BYU really struggled into mid to early February last year. I was at the Kansas game where everything seemed to flip. They were on like a 2-game winning streak and ended up winning like 8 straight after that. I just don't know if they have enough. We've talked about it. Three guys that were expected to play key roles this year are out with injury for the season. Nate Pickens and Dawson Baker are 2 of the key ones. Dawson Baker was a key returnee. And it just feels like if they don't get great games from all 3 of the big 3, Richie Saunders, Rob Wright, AJ DeBonsa, it's hard for them to win. Again, we'll see if they can make a little bit of a run down the stretch, but I worry a little bit about BYU. I just don't know if they have enough to win a national championship. A team BYU played in the exhibition slate, Nebraska. Nebraska's a great story. I'm not trying to undersell what they're doing. Plus 3,800. And listen, that game at Michigan a week ago, I thought they were maybe more impressive than Michigan was in some ways. They've never won a tournament game, okay? And so for me to expect them to now win 6 straight games in the NCAA tournament, it feels unlikely. I think a second weekend, it's a successful season. I don't think they can do it. Couple more before we get out of here. Arkansas, listen, I actually have an Arkansas ticket from when I was in Vegas to start the season. Can you give me 3 straight games of consistently excellent play, Arkansas? Because even in the wins the last couple weeks, you haven't been that good. Weren't good against LSU, survived. Weren't good against Houston, survived. Or Oklahoma, survived. And so I think the talent's there. I need to see it more than 2 games in a row. Listen, I'll tell you this. If you can beat Texas Tech, if you can beat Louisville, if you can beat Tennessee, you can get to a Final Four. But I need the consistency. Arkansas, I just don't feel like it's quite right there. Same boat, St. John's. St. John's right now is still plus 10,000 according to Circa. Great team, playing much better. I just don't know if they quite have enough to win 6 games. I mean, maybe you bet them to go to the Final Four and then you hedge from there because I think they could get to a Final Four. I don't know if they could win 6 straight. And Kentucky, I know they're playing better. They've won 5 of 6, just beat Arkansas at Bud Walton, beat Tennessee at Tennessee. They're like plus 12,000 right now, according to the odds that I saw online. Maybe they have changed in the last day or two since Kentucky beat Arkansas. Just bring it up. If you're a Kentucky fan, you're never going to get better odds on Kentucky winning a national championship at plus 1250. All right, so those are the teams that I think it's just not their year. Even Gonzaga, listen, great story. I don't know if they have enough. BYU, Arkansas, St. John's, Nebraska, and UK. And then, like I said, the 8 teams, or let's do the 4 teams that I think need the right breaks. I think Florida plus 1,600, Michigan State, Purdue, and also Texas Tech. The 8 teams that I do think can win it all, this via the Circus Sportsbook. Michigan, your favorite nationally at plus 370. Arizona at plus 500. Houston at plus 1,000. UConn at plus 1,200. Duke at plus 1,250. Iowa State at plus 1,400. Illinois at plus 1,600. And Kansas at plus 4,500. All right, I'll tell you what. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. When we do, we'll get some of your questions, some of your comments, and we will get to, as the Alabama Crimson Tide turn, a surprise voice saying what Torres has been saying. If Charles Bediako plays, Alabama should not be in the tournament. The latest on Alabama, the latest on Tyran Stokes, #1 high school player in America who was in Lawrence, Kansas over the weekend. Take a quick break. 2 more segments. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan, and one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauley Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauley Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CauleyPuffs.com. That's CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase, 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. CauleyPuffs.com gets you 15% off. Cauley Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Cauley Puffs. All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. Good to be back. I'll tell you what, we got a lot of good stuff in the chat. Before we get to Alabama, we'll get to a couple of your questions. Before we get to the questions, though, you know what I got to do? I got to thank our friends and the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres pod. I got to thank SeatGeek. So SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app. Over 28 million downloads. And what I love about SeatGeek is 2 things. 1, every ticket on the app rated 1 through 10 gives you a green dot or a red dot. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means that ticket might not quite be for you. But what I really love about SeatGeek is this. They take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. So I see Arizona fans in the chat. I see Michigan fans in the chat. I see UConn fans in the chat. And let me say this. You want to go to any game. You're a UConn fan. Maybe you want to go to the St. John's game on Friday night. Maybe you want to go to Xavier on Tuesday. If you're a Michigan fan, a lot of big games ahead, including Michigan State's return trip to Ann Arbor. Arizona, you know what's on the slate going forward. Well, guess what? If you go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app, if you use promo code Torres, it gets you $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek app, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. That's for any game, any ticket. It could be a concert, it could be a show, but certainly any sporting event that you want to go to. If there's a ticket on SeatGeek, you can go ahead and find it there. SeatGeek, use promo code Torres. By the way, I shouldn't tell you this, but I love you as an audience. If you've used SeatGeek before, don't tell SeatGeek I told you this. If you use a different email, it'll count as your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. Man, I see a lot of good comments in the chat. Why don't we go ahead and get to a few of those before we get to the latest with Nate Oats and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Couple different things, including Darryn Peterson, but also the odds to win the championship. Steve Strong says, I feel like UConn would have beaten Arizona if they had Terrace Reed and Braylon Mullins or both, even if they didn't play full minutes. Listen, I stay away from that only because every time I bring up injuries, somebody gets mad, right? I think it is absolutely fair to say that essentially a one-possession game without Terrace Reed, your most important low-post player, and of course without Braylon Mullins, yes, I absolutely think UConn could have won that game. And I remember talking about it at the time of like, if you remember, I remember talking about this, is like, if I remember correctly talking about the game, Eric Ribo was the only guy on UConn that you would be like, oh, he played something close to his best game. Everybody else struggled. Everybody else was out. And it's a credit to Arizona for winning that game. But I just bring it up because, yes, in a rematch, if UConn's at full strength, they can win that game. And so, listen, again, but I'm just going to piss off an Arizona fan for saying it. We don't want to discredit Arizona for going to Gampel Pavilion and getting the win. But I do think it is fair to say that in a 4-point game, UConn could have won if they had their full roster. So, yes, I think it's totally fair to say that. I've seen some other stuff in the chat about, is UConn still the favorite? Listen, if UConn, let's see, here you go. This is from Alberto, excuse me. He says, Aaron, if UConn finally shows their full potential, how far could you see them going? I think they can win it all. Alberto, I agree with you 1,000%. We just need to see it consistently. The Creighton game was a great first step. Now we got to see it. Xavier on Tuesday night, also St. John's on Friday night. And all I'll really say to that is that, UConn fans know this. This is kind of an inside UConn conversation, but the 2023 national champion, that was the first of the back-to-back. UConn really struggled in February, took their lumps, and really flipped the switch when they got to February. And so I think UConn fans are saying, hey, is this 2023 all over again, except instead of struggling, we're actually getting wins as opposed to having close losses. So we'll see. I think this week shows a lot. You have Xavier at home, destroy them. Seek and destroy. As Dan Hurley would say, what does Dan Hurley say? Foot on gas. Can we get that consistently? If we can, I think UConn can prove again this week with the win against Xavier, if there's a win against Xavier, and then also against St. John's, like, you can do it, but you gotta at some point prove it, and we'll see what happens. A couple more, and then we'll get to whatever. Florida top 10, Golden's done a great job, and I think Comic Book Chris is actually an Arizona fan, so credit to an Arizona fan for acknowledging. Listen, what Todd Golden's done is awesome. I actually do give him a lot of credit. And I think, again, when I was really looking at their resume, what stood out to me about Florida, look at their losses. 6 losses, but they were to Arizona by 6, at Duke by 1, UConn by 4. Like, that's unbelievable. And I think you can argue, really, if you actually look at Florida's resume, and by the way, they lost basically at the buzzer at Missouri. If you look at the resume, the only real bad losses, certainly TCU is a game that you cannot lose, although that game might actually get TCU into the tournament because they're very much a bubble team. The only really bad loss was they just didn't show up ready to play against Auburn at home. So shout out Steve Pearl. We'll talk about Bruce Pearl in a second. That's really the only game that you sit there and say, like, damn, Florida just did not show up. Florida sitting at 16-6. I agree with Comic Book Chris, who says they are very much a top 10 team. I agree 100%. Polls might not reflect it, but they're absolutely playing like it right now. The Florida Gators, by the way, interesting week for them. They are off until Saturday. They will play what is now first place Texas A&M on Saturday. Texas A&M playing at Alabama on Wednesday night. We'll talk about Alabama in half a second. Really quickly, Matt, 1 or 2 other ones that we should get to here. Here you go. This is Comic Book Chris again. He says Arizona's projected as a Vegas favorite versus every single team left on the schedule, which is crazy. Tommy Lloyd is currently 0-4 against Kelvin, including 1 at Gonzaga. I guess Gonzaga, Houston. I guess that counts on Tommy's resume record. But it's interesting. He says Tommy built Arizona to beat one team, and that is Houston. The rest takes care of itself. I can tell you this. I think there are a lot of teams in the Big 12. Houston is the gold standard that they are trying to reach, and they should be. Houston was a player or two away from winning the national championship last year. But I bring it up because I know for a fact BYU has said the same thing. They were like, we had all the talent in the world, all the skill last year. we weren't tough enough. We didn't have enough physicality. And Houston was a team that beat them twice, including late when they weren't losing to anybody. So Arizona is not the only team that has built their roster to try to compete with Houston. It's the same with BYU. And I think what's interesting about Arizona is they do have that physical toughness, but I also think the guard play is good enough. It's a rarity. Listen, I know with Arizona fans, you don't want to start talking Final Four. For people who don't know the history, Arizona has one of the best histories in college basketball, but no Final Four since 2001. Don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I think they should feel pretty good. All right, Matt, I'll tell you what. Let's do one more really quick. No, it's okay. You can pop it up. This is on Darryn Peterson. Kevin, who I believe is an Iowa State fan, says if he's cramping all the time by halftime, he's not taking care of himself. You can't just show up and play. This ain't high school ball. You're not playing 15 to 18-year-olds. You know, Bill Self said he thought they had a week off last week. Darryn Peterson didn't practice, that maybe that had an impact on Monday night or on Saturday against BYU. All I know is this. It was weird that after everyone in the national media, forget me, but I will tell you, I said it earlier. I know for a fact that people at Kansas were not happy that I tweeted what I tweeted about. I think Darryn Peterson is load managing. I know for that for a fact. But when Gary Parrish says it on his show, when John Rothstein says it on his show, when the Field 68 guys say it, when everyone is saying the same thing, you do have to start to question it. All right, I'll tell you what. I want to switch gears. I want to wrap on two quick topics before we get out of here. The first one, let's switch gears and let's talk about the ever-evolving story of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Okay, so Alabama has become a national talking point because of this Charles Bediako situation, okay? And at this point, I have said my absolute piece on Charles Bediako. You know where I stand. You know that I don't love it, but I've said my piece. It's not about my opinion anymore. Nate Oats doesn't care about my opinion. Alabama doesn't care about my opinion. And at some point, it is clear that they are just going to keep playing him. And it is actually kind of clear to me that there probably are going to be no repercussions for playing him, okay? But I bring it up because it's something that has pissed off everyone in college basketball. You know, we heard Todd Golden call him out. I thought Todd Golden, talk about backing up your words. You know, Todd Golden at that media availability a few weeks ago said, yeah, if they play Bediako, we're still going to kick their ass. And that's exactly what happened because Alabama just got destroyed at Florida. I thought it was interesting, specifically Florida's front court, which has a bunch of future NBA players, really gave it to Bediako. Okay, so Florida kind of called him out. You know, media members have called him out. I think Tennessee fans got a joy out of beating Alabama with Charles Bediako. But I bring it up because it's this national story that isn't going away. We'll talk about if Alabama should or does have regrets in a minute. But what it goes back to for me is this. Charles Bediako is not an eligible player. Unlike every other player, the high school players, the European players, James Nagy, he was not cleared by the NCAA. He is ineligible. He should not be playing. And I think the NCAA should do, I still think they should punish Alabama. Maybe Alabama is getting its punishment because they got destroyed by Florida on Sunday. But in my opinion, you have to punish them because they are breaking the rules. They are playing an ineligible player. Well, I bring it up because over the last couple of days, an interesting voice has come out and spoken up and basically said the same thing I did. That is Bruce Pearl. Now, I want to say this. We're going to get to some Bruce Pearl sound in half a second, okay? Same time. Bruce Pearl being critical of Nate Oats, I get how it looks, okay? I understand he's the former Auburn coach talking about the Alabama coach. But one, remember, he's in the media now. So it's his job to talk about the biggest stories in college basketball. Two, listen to what he actually says because he says, look, I'm the Auburn coach. No matter what I say, people are always going to say, oh, you just want Alabama to lose because you're the former Auburn coach, okay? Listen to what Bruce Pearl said. I thought it was very interesting, an interview he did with my buddy Dan Dockich over on the Outkick Network. Here is Bruce Pearl talking about what he thinks should happen at Alabama.
Would they even consider banning Alabama from the tournament for playing this kid?
Well, I think they should consider it. I think it's something that should be talked about. And look, Dan, as you know, like anything that you would say about Purdue that would be at all critical, it doesn't matter how much you love Matt Painter or it doesn't matter how much I respect Nate Oats. I'm the Auburn coach, so what I'm saying about Alabama must be something personal, and let's just take that right off the table. This has nothing to do with Auburn and Alabama's rivalry, okay? Well, here's what I don't like, all right? I lost my job, okay, because I had some kids over the house that had committed to me as juniors, and I had them over the house, and I shouldn't have, and I fed them, and I didn't tell the truth about it. I lost an $11 million contract, and I almost got knocked out of coaching. Now, if I'd have gone to court, do you think that the courts would have said, geez, you've got this whole career, you've done all this. That's that's a big penalty. I'm not so sure I couldn't get an injunction and win that. Okay, but I broke the rules. This is what the rules were. I made a mistake. It cost me. All right. And okay, so the NCAA, Alabama went and said, hey, we want to get Bediako eligible. We think there's some argument about the fact that he's being treated differently as an American that played professionally versus European kids. It's a good argument to have. But the NCAA said no. They said, no, he's not eligible. You guys are part of the SEC. You're part of the NCAA. You guys choose to be here. Therefore, you choose to play by our rules. And so when we don't like the ruling, what do? We go to court and get an injunction.
So that was Bruce Pearl with Dan Dockich talking about the Alabama Charles Bediako situation. Let me say this. I understand that no matter what Bruce Pearl says, it's going to be, he's the Auburn guy talking about Alabama. What I think he said was accurate, and I agree with him clearly 100%. Maybe he's listening to the Aaron Torres pod, former guest of the Aaron Torres pod. Maybe we got to get him on. I agree with him 100%. First of all, two things about what Bruce Pearl said. One, he's 100% right about the whole court injunction thing. Listen, I'm not a lawyer, but we all know, and this was something Todd Golden talked about the other day, is like, listen, pick any school. And what he said is true, is that if any school has any issue with the NCAA, they can probably find a sympathetic local judge that just says, you know what, we'll put out a temporary restraining order, we'll allow you to do whatever it is. And I think he brought up a great point. He said, listen, 15, 20 years ago, when I got fired at Tennessee, could I have found a judge in Tennessee, in Knoxville, in whatever county that they're in, that would have absolutely created a temporary restraining order so I could have so that I could have kept coaching at Tennessee? Of course I could have. And by the way, it's not a knock on Tennessee or Alabama or an SEC thing. I'm a UConn guy. I'm sure if something happened in, is it Harford County? Is it Vernon County? UConn fans, don't make fun of me. What county is Stores in? You could have found a judge that would put out a so what Bruce Pearl's saying is correct. You can find a judge that is always going to have your back in these small college towns. It's true in Tuscaloosa, Knoxville. It's true in where my alma mater is, Stores. It's indisputable, okay? Stores County is located in Talon County. That's right. Shout out, Matt. I'm sorry. Shout out Talon County. How could I forget? Beautiful Talon County, okay? Spent 4 years of my life in Talon County. Vernon is the exit after Stores, by the way. I do know. Vernon exit 67 on 84. Stores exit 68. Anyway, let's keep going. All right. So what Bruce Pearl is saying is correct. The other thing is what he also said was correct as well. Listen, is there an argument that it is stupid that we are making European players that were professional eligible? There is absolutely an argument, but it is a precedent that was set long ago. And it was a precedent that Alabama could have taken advantage of. They could have recruited European players. They could have gotten some, 6'9" dude from Belgium or some 21-year-old from Russia. They could have gotten them just like everybody else did. But as I have said repeatedly, there are 3 rules that the NCAA has said are no-goes. You have to be within 5 years of your high school graduation to get eligible. You have to have never played in an NBA game, and you have had to never signed an NBA contract. And so these are the rules. Everybody knows them. And by the way, the NCAA put out that statement 2-3 weeks ago well before Charles Bediako played. Remember, there was a player named Trenton Flowers who played in NBA games. There was a report he wanted to come back to college. And the NCAA said weeks before the Bediako stuff came out, like, no, if you've played in an NBA game, if you've signed an NBA contract, you are not eligible. And so it's not a gray area. It's not confusing. It is different than European players. Like Bruce Pearl said, there's an argument, but it is different. No European player playing college basketball ever played college basketball, forfeited his eligibility, and then decided to come back. That player doesn't exist. And so again, for the last time, and by the way, I can think some of it's dumb. I don't think James Najee should be eligible. I said that from the beginning, but it doesn't change the fact that, as I said, as Bruce Pearl said, they knowingly played an ineligible player. And so, yes, I think it's fine to have the conversation of if they should be ineligible. Now, I'll say two things before we switch gears and wrap the show. One, I will defend Nate Oats on one thing. We didn't pull this sound, but on his Monday radio show, he was kind of actually asked about high school recruiting, and he did bring up a valid point. He said, we're going to keep recruiting high school players, but if the NCAA doesn't clarify who's eligible and how long eligibility goes, then I have to rethink it. And his argument is that some of these European players are coming over at 20, 21, 22, and they're being given 4 years of eligibility. So he said, like, I'm not going to recruit 18-year-olds if my opponents are playing 26-year-olds. And so I do think that's fair. James Najee, by the way, my biggest gripe with James Najee, he got 4 years of eligibility at 21 years old. That doesn't make sense. Give him a year, give him two. That's it. By the way, Testa Ritter at Virginia was 22 when he got to campus. He's listed as a freshman. Now, Virginia fans say he only got 2 years of eligibility. I haven't seen that. He's listed as a freshman on the Virginia website. So Nate Oats, I will defend on that. We need clarification on how many, like a 21-year-old shouldn't be getting 4 years of eligibility unless they were in the military or there's some extreme situation. I'll also say this about Nate Oats. Listen, he opened up a can of worms, and I think there should be a line where you have to self-police yourself. Okay. And I think that was Todd Golden's argument after the game. This isn't the same as Europeans. We all know the rules. We're all trying to play by the rules. By the way, I think this was Bruce Pearl's argument as well. The counter to that is I do think this Amari Bailey situation that has popped up will be interesting over the next few months. For people who did not see this story, it was on Friday after we were done with the show. And Amari Bailey, who played at UCLA during the 2022-2023 season, does an interview with ESPN where he says, I want to come back to college basketball. And it wasn't some vague report of No, he said on the record in a public interview, I want to come back to college basketball. He has played in NBA games. He is currently a free agent. And I'll tell you what, Nate Oats might not end up being the bad guy because I do think at some point somebody's going to try to sign this guy. And once you have a guy that played college basketball, left and played in the NBA, then I think we officially have no rules. Then I think it's, forget five. That's when I think it gets crazy and you start to see all sorts of crazy stuff. By the way, I'll wrap on a little bit of a funnier note. I saw this argument going on social media of, basically, look, there are clearly no eligibility rules. And somebody put out the hypothetical. Could you put Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the worst college basketball team, and could he lead him to a national championship? Listen, it's a fun hypothetical. I don't think we're that far from that actually happening. But listen, I agree with Bruce Pearl. I think it should be in play. I don't think we'll get an NCAA tournament suspension, but I think it should be in play. I have no issue with that conversation at all. But I do think there are larger issues to be discussed. And I think, unfortunately, this Charles Bediako thing just might be the tip of the iceberg. One last conversation, we'll get out of here because I think there's just one more thing that I want to get to. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but we talk a lot of recruiting on this channel, and it's in that time of year. McDonald's All-American games and McDonald's All-American rosters were announced on Monday. And a name that you certainly saw on that list is the number one high school basketball player in America, Tyran Stokes. Okay, so Tyran Stokes, we have talked so much about his recruitment over the last probably year, but it's certainly taken on a few new twists over the last really 72 hours or so. First of all, I think everybody knows. I'll be very quick because if you don't know, if you're watching this, I assume you know. But number one high school player in the class of 2026, from Louisville, Kentucky, spent most of his high school career here on the West Coast. And as of September, October, he was playing his high school ball about a mile from where I'm sitting right now at Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, California. Okay. And at the time, this was back in September, October, he cut his recruiting list down to 5 schools: Kansas, Kentucky, USC, Oregon, and Louisville. And there was talk like, oh, this kid's going to commit any day now. And I remember right around his 18th birthday in October, is he going to commit? And then it was Big Blue Madness in Kentucky. Is he going to commit? And then we know what happened. And I'm not trying to be facetious, but he got thrown out of his high school. He got in a fight at the school. He was asked to leave. He resurfaces at Rainier Beach High School in Seattle, Washington, and it has been a very quiet recruitment ever since then, at least until Saturday. And that is because he showed up at Fall Allen Fieldhouse for the game, Kansas versus BYU. We'll get to some of what happened at Fall Allen, but before we do, let's play a quick video. Tyran Stokes at Fall Allen Fieldhouse on Saturday. So that was Tyran Stokes, number one high school recruit in America at Fall Allen Fieldhouse. You can see him there with Talon Kinney, who is committed to Kansas, dapping up Curtis Townsend, the lead assistant at Kansas. Thought it was interesting, by the way. I'm sure everybody saw the video of Tyran Stokes. Bill Self, I think it was at halftime of that game, came over, dapped up Talon Kinney, who was obviously right there with Tyran Stokes. Also, I should mention, on top of Talon Kinney, he wasn't in that video, but there was also a 2027 5-star named Javen Bardwell who was also at the game. Bill Self didn't dap up Tyran Stokes, and so it became a question of Kentucky fans were like, does Bill Self not like him? And Kansas fans were like, is it an NCAA violation? I don't know why, but he was there. He was clearly having a good time. And I'll tell you this, I think it certainly puts a new, interesting twist on this recruitment. And I think we'll see pretty quickly if Kansas is officially the favorite. And at this point, I'll be honest, I would be somewhat surprised if he ends up anywhere other than Kansas. First off, I'll say this, like, transparently, I think it's hard to get credible information on who's even recruiting this kid at this point, right? Like I said, Final 5 of Louisville, Kentucky, Oregon, and USC. I think by the time that we thought that he could potentially commit to Kentucky, it was really down to Oregon, Kentucky, and Kansas. Louisville, I think, has been out for a while. I know that's his hometown school, but I don't think there was ever a moment probably in the last, coming out of the summer where it really felt like Louisville was in great shape. USC, never doubt Coach Muss, but I can tell you this, I feel pretty confident saying they have a lot of money committed to next year's roster. Rodney Rice, I think they expect to be back, season-ending injury. He was one of the big names in the portal this past year. They actually had 2 McDonald's All-Americans announced on Monday as well, outside of Tyran Stokes, who's obviously not committed to USC, but the Ratliff twins, they're not coming. I think there's, by the way, an increasingly likely chance that Elijah Arenas comes back for a second year. He just debuted. I know he was a projected one and done, but this is a loaded draft class. I think it kind of makes sense for him to come back. I don't know if he will, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. So I just bring it up to very simply say that it would not shock me if Tyran Stokes ends up that USC is probably out of the picture. By the way, I don't know if you can see me, but my dog just jumped on the couch right behind me. So we'll wrap here pretty quickly. But I don't think USC is really recruiting him. I'll say this, the Kentucky stuff is interesting. Jason Hart has been out to see him a few times, but I don't know if Kentucky's actually recruiting him all that much. And then I'd be curious to see, what's going on in Oregon. I just can't see him going to Oregon at this point, solely because Oregon's pretty bad. Listen, I've kind of just checked out on Oregon basketball here for a while because of the fact that I don't find them very interesting with Dana Altman. I didn't realize they were in last place in the Big Ten, 1-10 right now in Big Ten games. So I just bring it up because it's bad there. So I don't even know who's recruiting them at this point. I think the relationship with Bill Self, the relationship with Curtis Townsend. I think this is kind of noteworthy. The relationship that he has with Talon Kinney. Remember, Talon Kinney committed. And when Talon Kinney committed, the first thing that he said after he committed was, all right, it's time to start working on Tyran now, Tyran being Tyran Stokes. So he's got a great relationship with Talon Kinney. It feels like Kansas is the one school that never really backed off this recruitment. He was on campus. I think the only X factor to me is Tyran Stokes' relationship with Nike. For people who don't know, Tyran Stokes is a Nike athlete. He's played Nike EYBL. And, I think back in the day, shoe companies really used to matter. I don't think it matters as much, right? Cooper Flagg was a New Balance athlete that played at Duke last year. But I do think it does matter. And I do think Nike will be paying part of his NIL. And I think they want him in a Nike school. But as of right now, it's just hard to see him anywhere other than Kansas. Kentucky, by the way, I didn't even mention there's the whole JMI mess with, I don't even know what's going on with JMI because it didn't seem to impact Will Stein at all. But I'm rambling. It's the end of the show. Number one player in America was at Kansas. And I'll tell you what, he goes to Kansas, it is game on because you got to remember, one, he'll be coming with Talon Kinney. Talon Kinney is an elite talent in his own right. And I think it'll be interesting, some of the other players that could hypothetically be back next year. Obviously, the most noteworthy one, Bryson Tiller, I think is playing his way into, I think probably doesn't strike me as a guy that would leave after this year. I think he's an NBA player. I just don't think it would make much sense for him to leave after this year because of the fact that this draft class is so loaded. But Bryson Tiller could be back. Flory Badunga could obviously be back. He's another one that does not feel like an NBA player, at least not at this point. I'm still a fan of Cole Rosario. He finally got on the court. He had not played in a couple games. Got on the court on Monday night against Texas Tech. So you start talking about how good this team could be next year. You add Tyran Stokes. You add that kind of player. Like I said, I think Kansas could be very good. All right. We're going to get out of here. Matt, anything else interesting in the chat before we get out of here? Let's see here. Comic Book Chris says, Stokes says, show me the money. I mean, doesn't everybody? Listen, I don't know if he's going to the highest bidder at this point, because I just think at this point, I don't know how many schools are even recruiting him, and he's the number one player in America. I will say this. I think if he opened up his recruitment, I think there'd be some, listen, if schools are now just recruiting NBA players off NBA rosters, I mean, I think if Tyran really opened it up, I'd be curious to see who else got involved. I think Kansas has to be the favorite. Yeah, I think everybody's saying show me the money right now. Welcome to college sports in 2026. Matt, anything else before we get out of here? SGA come home to UK. Listen, this cracked me up. So I saw this right before we went on air here, but I thought it was very applicable for the conversation. But it said something to the effect of, it was a Twitter trend. It said, could Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I'm just going to try to find it really quick because I thought it was really funny. It made me laugh. We all need to laugh in this day and age of college sports, right? But it was a trending topic. It says, could Shai Gilgeous-Alexander carry Valparaiso to a national championship? And it said, Nick Bateman asked if adding SGA, who's averaging 32 points per game for the Thunder, to Valparaiso's 11-11 roster, ranked 159th in the net, would make them national champions. Skeptics point to Valparaiso's massive efficiency gaps against top teams and past stars like Kevin Durant, who couldn't carry weak squads deep. Fans split on whether SGA's elite scoring and drives could collect. It's a funny thing. It is genuinely funny. Nick Bateman's quote is tweeted. JBB Bracketology says a genuinely fascinating hypothetical with the replies split. It's actually a very funny thing. So anyway, all right, I'll tell you what. I got to go ahead and get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, do me a favor, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcast, subscribe. Do me another quick favor. That Inside College Sports email newsletter. Listen, so much good stuff in that newsletter. You need to be subscribed, right? Because here's the thing, is that there's so much going on in the world of college sports, and it's only going to get crazier. Listen, we're heading into March. We are heading into a world where the college basketball transfer portal is going to be open. By the way, apparently the NBA transfer portal is going to be open as well. College Carousel, it's free to sign up. I promise you, I'm never going to charge you anything for it. But go ahead and sign up there because, again, every piece of news to your inbox every single day, courtesy of the AT Pod. All right, we're going to roll. Time to run. Thank you for your support. And we are going to get out of here. Shout out to Torrin Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me. Probably no live show on Wednesday. Very quiet slate this week. Arizona is off all week. Arkansas is off all week. So we will see what the docket looks like on Wednesday morning. If not, I'll definitely be back Thursday. Got to preview a monster weekend. UConn St. John's, UNC Duke, BYU Houston. Going to be a fun weekend of college basketball. Appreciate everything.